Welcome to another video in Finding Freedom. I know the thumbnail is going to trigger some people along with the title, but let's get into it, right? FBI and Homeland Security do what exactly besides fuck around and find out, right? I mean, a little lazy much, aren't you? You sound like my ex-girlfriend, right? Why do I need to do this? Why do I got to study for? I got you. You could do all the work. Sounded like some of the people that me, Staff Sergeant Straight, and a couple other people used to teach back in the day that, well, fell into DOJ and Homeland Security when teaching them about, well, EOD stuff. And, well, my background, as you know, my name is Michael Guerrero. I have a background in magic, martial arts, and chess, and I used to utilize my background in magic to educate individuals on how things used to get smuggled in and out, how to hide certain things, compartments, etc., communication, whether it's in public or, how should I say this in your terminology, overt, covert, etc., right? And then, of course, people like to exploit that. Some people wanted to use the information that I gave them to keep their job so that they didn't get burned and then catch amnesia. But let's get into it, because people will tend to say something and then not understand what the hell's going on because they think they're so highly trained to a certain point, right? So first, let's get into, well, what are the different entities when it comes to the two parts, right? So let's talk about DOJ, right? Part of that is the FBI, right? And then, of course, you have the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, right? That's part of the DOJ. They also cover, well, things like the Civil Rights Division, National Security Division, and then, of course, the National Fraud, so on and so forth, Enforcement Division, which is relatively new in 2026. But if you knew much about national security, you would know what the fuck to look for and ask questions to understand. If you knew about civil rights, you won't violate those or human rights just to get what you want or to entrap or blackmail somebody. You would listen the fuck up and pay attention, right? Now, forgive me, in another video, I did state that I was going to speak in a certain manner in which that I used to, well, educate, instruct, and teach you motherfuckers on the West Coast when I was in the Marine Corps. Because I'm pretty sure Quantico, Marine Corps base Quantico, one of your assignments is to fucking get on base. You're lucky that you sometimes talk to a civilian and not one of us at the gate. We'd really piss you off. So, U.S. attorneys. U.S. attorneys actually fall underneath the Department of Justice, right? Then you have the OIG, the OSG, right? The Supreme Court, right? The Office of Solicitation General, or the official office, Solicitor General Office, whatever it's called. They represent those in the DOJ and Supreme Court, right? And just like military personnel, or most military personnel understand this, you don't go to fucking court martial unless you know you could win. So the only reason lawyers and attorneys in North Carolina are being intimidated to work with me to take on such a case that has occurred is because, well, they got intimidated or were told not to, because of civil rights violations and human rights violations. Now, mind you, this is for educational purposes, and I'm still enjoying my cup of coffee. Now, when it comes to the Department of Homeland Security, you have Secret Service, you have CISA, which is, well, cyber, you have the FLETC, you have, well, the CWMD, right, etc. That deals with weapons and ammunitions. I don't know if you fucking know that, but you do. Now you do. And then, of course, you have the the OHS, right, the Office of Health and Safety, which normally deals with medical. But then again, if an attorney had the balls, I mean, I think I've got to find a New York attorney or someone from like Chicago, because there's too many soft people here. I remember we got reprimanded because we were on a different base as Marines, and they said, please do not talk to the people like that here. They're not used to hearing that type of language. They have soft ears. Now you know what that means. It doesn't mean you're a bitch. It doesn't mean you're a girl, and so on and so forth. It just means that you were trained, groomed, and educated to speak in such a manner that was deemed or dictated, well, aesthetically pleasing to make you feel good as it's communicated to you. All right? Because some people don't like fucking curse words. And as Selma Hayek, one of the most beautiful women, Shakira is number one, and she'd probably kill me if we were actually married and I said this, but Selma Hayek is also a genius and a very dangerous woman who stated once that the only reason you get offended because of the words that are deemed taboo is because of the definitions that were assigned to it, that were taught to you. If you didn't understand or the meaning or the definition, you would not feel disgruntled or upset. And then, of course, those that are still wanting to be a pain in the ass would say, well, I understand the meaning and the definition of it, so can you please refrain from using it? No, fucktard. Why? Because in your job, in the field, in the street, so on and so forth, there's different phrases and sayings for a lot of things, right? Jarvis in Marvel is a fucking robot. Javis in Spain or in Latin America means keys. Right? Agua is water in Spanish traditional language. In Puerto Rico, agua viene means that people in blue uniforms, the local law enforcement, are showing up. So educate yourself and stop being such a pussy when it comes to hearing communication with words that you don't enjoy. Now let's talk about certain things because, well, I'm going to be going into a series, where my background in training got me flagged within the United States. I guess somebody thought I was a threat or whatever. Another person was like, it takes one to know one. And then somebody wanted to accuse me of being a fucking spy of all fucking things. If I was a spy, would I be on social media? Would I have pictures of myself and other people that I surround myself with on social media so that that could get linked, cross-referenced, facial recognition could go ahead and get the points and the identifiers to match up to go to the DMV, get cross-checked, and then they could point me out and figure out where I am by a simple cell phone search with Cellbrite or anything else? Wake the fuck up, right? You got kids in the street now saying, are you woke? Are you wake? Oh, this person's woke. Well, as Cardi B says, if it's up, which is another word of saying woke or awake, right? It means you woke up, right? If it's up, then I guess you're stuck. So pay attention, cupcakes. Police, law enforcement, right? Your area, the laws, normally local or national laws, you deal with arrests and crimes that have been committed. Sometimes you do preventative stuff, but crimes that have already been committed. That's like when somebody is starting an altercation in public and they're like, well, I'll call these people. By the time they fucking get here, sweetheart, I could tell you that the crime will already be done. Why? Because it's happened over and over again throughout time, and anybody that's in that field can tell you as such, right? Now, security, something I did at the ASP because the stuff that I guarded and protected took lives, right? Weapons of mass destruction, ammunitions and explosives for the military. Think about it, right? The training's a little bit different, right? We're often proactive, sometimes reactive, depending on the situation. And we pretty much have one job, is to guard and protect and to stop anybody trying to do something. I don't give a shit about your rank. I don't give a shit about your department. I don't give a fuck about where you are. Right? And this is the same way I used to speak to the individuals that came out to train with us. If you don't believe me, go, by all means, research Staff Sergeant Straight from EOD, Camp Pendleton, California, asked to speak to the Chief Warrant Officer who also used to lead exercises, and the smartass from Homeland Security that wanted to run his fucking mouth not knowing an explosive was hidden in a fucking laptop sitting on his lap while he was taking notes, and then halfway through the presentation, Chief Warrant Officer instructed him to open up the back of the laptop, take off the casing and the covering, and half a stick of fucking Syntex was stacked and connected to a battery with a blasting cap ready to blow his dick and his legs off. So please pay attention because things aren't color coded out there. Security has one job. Yes, we train the way both people do, right? And I'll get into the third one, but we train like police. We also train for security purposes, and we also train like the intelligence community, right? Because we have to have situational awareness, we have to be smart, we have to know psychology, we have to know sociology, we have to be up to date on certain trends, cons, shim-shams, flim-flams, so on and so forth, both long and short, and see through the veil, as they would say, or peek behind the curtain. Right? But our job is to initially stop or to get or to deter the situation. Andrew Bustamante say he used to watch over nukes, which means he was in the security field within the Air Force, right? So he got part of this training, but nukes aren't relatively always sought after as they are depicted in movies, unlike other ammunitions. and explosives, right? AT4s, Google it. Somebody got caught trying to move those, right? Rocket launchers, military grenades, different types of ammunitions and rounds like fragile rounds, right? That break apart upon impact, so it's harder to identify, all right? What about tracer rounds, right? So if you have a chain link, so on and so forth, of let's say Dodak 172, right? So on and so forth, or you're shooting 7.62 rounds because you're shooting a saw and you need to keep count, you know, every fourth round is, well, you know, how you keep count. So you count by fours every time you see that so you can keep track of the ammunition so you know when to reload. But you understand this, right? You know this already, right? You're that smart, or you just, well, are sounding like my ex. No offense to her. Why do I got to do all this work when I got you? Why do I need to hire an attorney or lawyer or go out and try to find one when they're just going to turn me away due to, well, I don't know, lack of whatever, faith in themselves, let's just say that, or fear or intimidation against a multi-billion-dollar company? I did most of the work. The evidence is already there. It's in their files. It's been documented. They can't backtrack. If they delete everything because it's too late after 6 years, they would not only contradict, but they would erase every bullshit false diagnosis, as well as the insurance and financial fraud that they ended up committing along the way. So for those of you in Homeland Security, I'm pretty sure Secret Service, who deals with finances, and the FBI and the DOJ can fucking track that, right? Open your fucking ears and unstuck yourself. Yeah, I said unstuck yourself, right? Because if you're up, then it's up, and if you're up, then you're stuck. If you're an attorney and you don't want to take on this case, which is pretty much open closed because they're not going to get rid of their evidence, they already have to go ahead and have their side prove something with medical documentation. So that would hinder their side, prove your side, open up a fucking medical journal, cross-reference that with online research. Hell, if you're lazy, use ChatGPT to hasten your research process so you can look at, well, what are the symptoms? How long does this actually go for? What are their signs? What are other respected doctors in the field do when it comes to things like this? What are the proper, well, procedures when it comes to things like involuntary commitment? How does that go against human rights? How does that go against civil rights? Because the only way you can IVC somebody is if they are a harm to others or a harm to themselves, because having a thought that somebody should be IVC'd is the wrong fucking way to go about it, but it's a real good way for a doctor to be reprimanded or stripped of credentials. Wake up. Now, Intel, if you're intelligence, which I mentioned Andy Bustamante, who was, well, he said he was in the CIA. He has pictures with my ex on Facebook and all this other stuff, which I think is weird, but it's out there. Their job is to collect information. That's it. I mean, they have different areas, right? They have, different areas and different people, just like you have different departments in the FBI, and Homeland Security has different branches or different MOSs within the military, right, that handle other stuff. But their main focus is to analyze and be preventative and look at things in the future, right? Whereas police handle past events and they look at past events. Remember earlier, right? Oh, I'm going to call the cops, this, that, and the third. Sweetheart, by the time they get here, it will be done. Right? That's why you have things like intelligence to look at certain patterns, right? Behavioral characteristics, unless you're messing with nefarious actors and then somebody wants to be like, yo, a contact of mine said that they were looking and utilizing AI, and it said that you might cause or commit a crime in the future based upon certain behaviors or factors. And if they already are informed of that and they shared that knowledge with other people that are also trying to coerce you into or entice you into doing such an act, well, then it's going to ring true just so that they could prove their AI system works, when in actuality it doesn't, unless you just continue to take the abuse or you push back. For you attorneys out there, remember, you get 33%, right? A 3, right? That's a third, right? Like the 3 and the third, as Eminem would say. right? So if you get a third of a multi-billion-dollar corporation who's either going to need to settle or end up in a fucking class action that makes $12 billion, pockets roughly 13%, so they're in the billion-dollar range of profit, bottom line, by the way. And then you have the doctors that collect a paycheck that have assets that they can either be seized, sanctioned, or subpoenaed. And then from there, well, bring into question their credentials along with everything else. How much do you think you're going to make from everything? I don't know, but it's a lot. Police handle past events, and then, of course, Intel handles future events, so on and so forth, right? But if Intel's collecting information, obviously they have to, well, look at future events, because how are they going to, well, be preventative or proactive? How are they going to assist and cross-reference with everyone else? And then, of course, you got those in the middle between intelligence, that would be like CIA, intelligence, etc., blah, blah, blah. And then you have your local police, DOJ, etc., and then who sits in the middle but the Department of Justice. But if justice doesn't exist, right, and people have to handle things in their own manner, their own way, because they just want to F around and find out or see what happens, right? Then the JP, the jelly and peanut butter song, right, or peanut butter jelly time sounds great, because that is the exact procedure that happens, right? Normally you go to jail first, they hold you there temporarily, normally a short time stint. I spent a night or two in one of those. And then, of course, from there you go to prison for a long-term stay, right? So if you hear the song Peanut Butter Jelly Time, right, does that mean somebody's going to jail or prison? I don't know, but it'd be an interesting song to hear. All right. So, I mean, what's the difference between security and police? Well, it also depends on the area, right? Security in malls, gas stations, so on and so forth, they're trained to observe and report. Whereas police are normally trained to do their job. Now, have I been told, oh, we don't need military personnel doing stuff? Well, you're moving too goddamn slow. You need to hurry the fuck up, because it's been 6 years and I'm tired. And as someone once said, this motherfucker wants his rent money back, right? Because you're keeping me here either as an insurance card, you're playing scientist, or you're looking at me as a specimen to study. Lord knows I have Google Docs out there with training that I wanted to present to some people. Yeah, I was going to charge a fee, but I'm sure somebody covers that. So let's continue, right? So in the regular world, security normally has a certain level, right, of privilege. Then, of course, the police normally handle everything else, along with DHS and the DOJ, right? And then, of course, in the military, it is different, right? You have MSG, which is military security guard. Those are the ones who protect the embassies, or military security, ASP, ammunition supply point, or other places, right? Quick reaction forces, security forces, etc. Then you have things like military police. Those would be your MPs. And then you have the investigators, which would be like your DOJ, FBI, which would be like your criminal investigation division of the Army, right? Or your NCIS, the Naval Criminal Investigation, so on and so forth, etc., that normally looks at North America, Central America, and South America, NCIS, because acronyms can mean different things. They investigate all three of those areas because it resides within the Americas. So if your dumbass says you're from America, well, are you North American, Central American, or South American, you dumb fuck? Does the Navy only operate in North America? I'm sure we operate in Central. I'm sure we operate in fucking South America as Venezuela. Watch the media, unless that's fictitious. How did those ships get there? Now, when it comes to the military, security gets trained on both parts. Lightly on the I side, lightly on the P side. So if you are a part of the cyber community, you also get trained in cybersecurity as well, right? Because some of the stuff, depending on what you're guarding and protecting, can be affected by technology and electronics. So you got to be careful with IP addresses, etc., or PII, personal identifying information, etc. You have to learn how to identify individuals based upon their presentation, because presentation is 9/10 of the law. And if somebody has certain characteristics, markings, or etc., it could tell you a lot about that individual or the story that they wish to present to others, right? If they have a tattoo of something, then what does that tattoo mean, right? If they have the tattoo of demons and angels on their body, but they say they're an atheist, are they really? Or at one point after they got the tattoo, did they turn as such, right? Because at one point, why would somebody get angels and demons on them, tattooed on them, unless they believed in something at one point, right? Or experienced something. So that's an indicator, and also an opening to a conversation if the tattoos are visible, right? If somebody has a tattoo of a paintbrush on their arm, are they an artistic person? What does it mean? Was it for their grandfather, or did they study art? Why would you get a paintbrush tattoo on your arm, right? Think about it, right? Why would you get a mushroom tattooed on yourself, etc.? Oh, it looked cool and it made me think of Super Mario, whatever, because he used to eat mushrooms to get bigger, right? Red and green, etc. So, I mean, think about it. Military police normally carry out similar things, such as regular police, laws, so on and so forth, etc. Military security is different, gets trained in 3 areas, can be misconstrued as such, but are normally out in the open just like everybody else. However, we are taught to do one thing and one thing only: to stop the individual that's trying to acquire something, or to stop a threat immediately, as quickly as fucking possible. Not to wait, but to stop it as quickly as possible, which is why we sometimes cross-train in 3 different areas. And then working with ammunitions, sometimes you get selected to go work with and train with EOD or other areas or other units, etc. I think my boy Caleb, he ended up going to an MSOB unit, so on and so forth. He got some good training out there. I ended up going out with EOD. That was fun as hell. And then cross-training with the Mexican military and other military, so on and so forth, and then getting to train people stateside, whether that was in DOJ, DHS, or local. So get off my fucking ass. Ask questions to understand, and don't be an asshole, because I'll prove to you very quickly how you can become a pussy. Now, did that offend you? I don't care, because you're going to need tough skin in order to get out in the world, right? Most things are not black and white. And if I have to repeat myself because you're thick-headed or you're being dumb and you do not want to acknowledge what is being said, I'm going to say it once and I'm going to stay quiet. Because just like the dumbass that had the laptop on on himself, and he kept talking and interrupting CWO on how, Chief Warrant Officer, by the way, CWO slang, on how he was trained, this, that, and the third, yada, yada. Why does he have to pay attention? He was blah, 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 blah. Or like the FBI female lady that was trying to get onto Marine Corps Base Quantico, because that's one of their assignments, by the way, because FBI's training facility is also partly on Marine Corps Base Quantico. If you haven't seen those photos, go ahead and go to my social media. I like to document my trips as well and put that in the public domain, so that if I have to represent myself in a courtroom, whether that's federal or supreme, everything's in the public domain, which can be utilized as evidence in the future to show that I exhausted my fucking resources, because nobody wanted to do anything. They wanted to stand by, and fuck around and find out, right? So don't stand by to stand by. Do your fucking job and move with haste, right? Don't be like the other one, right? Why do I got to do all this? I got you. Get off your lazy ass. It's time to earn a paycheck, right? Because if I established a trend and a pattern, which those of you in those areas would know, a trend and a pattern would normally dictate that it's probably also happened to more people, which opens the grounds for, well, a class action, which is, well, a larger case settlement or a larger, thing in a courtroom for all you lawyers and attorneys out there, which probably be in the hundreds of millions of dollars in bragging rights, etc. And we can go ahead, and because they were asking me so many fucking questions in the hospital when I was there, because somebody wanted to play with a new Harry Potter term, etc., that they learned because they didn't like my mouth, and I kept saying, we got to flush the system. Now you know what flushing the system means. So hopefully you can either do your fucking job and flush the system, or I will find individuals to assist me in that very process. And then hopefully we could get this bitch to Supreme Court, because if it's happened here in this state and it's happened other places, well, it's probably happened nationally. And that's a fucking security issue. National security, individuals. So, oh yeah, Michael went like this. Bitch, I know. We were communicating. Remember Top Gun Maverick? Did that offend you, or you were trying to use a scare tactic or play the intimidation game? Get the fuck out my face with that bullshit. You run security. Act as such. Train as such. Unfuck yourselves. If you're awake, right? Or if you've been awake, past tense, so you're woke, get unstuck. Hope this came across to the individuals that are in those fields well. I don't care if I ruffled feathers. I really don't. That's not my purpose in this video, right? My job was to come across with Sigmund Freud's taboo language. Google it, look it up, go to a library, for crying out loud. Lord knows I've been to one. There's pictures of that too in the Public Law Library up in Raleigh, North Carolina, by all means, right? As though I can't read a fucking book, right? On the U.S. Code 1847 and a couple other ones. Telecommunications, along with 1847 would deal with telecommunications, wire fraud, things like that. In case you want to hack into someone's phone, not realizing that the signal bounces off a lot of things and crosses state lines the moment you tap in, so you're already committing a federal crime. So have fun, cupcakes. Right? You never studied Kevin Mitnick, and if you studied Mitnick, for those of you in the FBI that are in cybersecurity, you would know he was one of the ones that was recognized for telephone and telecommunications fraud, right? Left you guys, I think, donuts in the fridge that spelt FBI, right? How about I give you a clue, right? Facebook, Instagram, that spells FBI, but that might be too meta for you. Wake the fuck up. Get off my ass. And if you want training, I could provide it to a certain extent, but I'm going to need to get paid more fucking money than $14 fucking an hour. So, till next time, my friends, I'll talk to you later. Hope this got through to a lot of you, because I promise you, there's a reason why certain individuals get paid hazard pay when working with a Marine. And before some dumbass wants to come out and say, oh, well, you're not that anymore, remember the motto: once a Marine, always a Marine, for a fucking good reason. So don't tell me what I am and what I'm not anymore. Maybe you're not from somewhere anymore, but do you have that motto? Because my family that I used to be a part of, well, we did, right? They may not be around right now. They may not be in, because I'm not under contract officially, right? My contract ended in 2020. Magically, that's when everything went crazy. I wonder why. We should look into that paperwork and what gave privilege for everything else to unfold and get so jacked up and fucked up along the lines. Why did somebody state something that was recorded on a phone that was listened to? When reported, somebody else wanted to go ahead and save somebody instead of getting them looked at, but yet let everything else happen to the other individual. Fucking think about it. I'm done. Figure it out. Unfuck yourselves. I'll see you guys in the next video. And if you want to check out class, by all means, check it out. We're on continuing education, because of the fact that, well, people only think in one dynamic or one dimension, right? Some people would say, oh, you're so 2D or 1D or 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever, right? Well, if class was an acronym: creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality, what is it in other languages? Well, it would be creativity, logic, art, science. Spirituality, I think, would be in there, but it would be, well, probably better understood, because you have emotions in there, which spirituality can tap into with music, presentation, and everything else. But how are you going to understand emotions, right? Who hurt you? Call back to the other video. So, if anything, I will see you guys in the next video on finding freedom, and this might even go on Alpha Gents. So hopefully I can introduce myself in a different fashion and, well, make some alpha gentlemen out of some of you. Take care, my friends. Peace.